Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of October 10th, 2024. And Ms. Wegner will lead us in the pledge today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, can you please call the roll?
Carolyn Campbell. Here. Joseph Gottemoller. Here. Terry Greeno. Eric Hendricks. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
James Kearns.
Here.
Matthew Kunkel.
Here.
Teresa Meshes.
Here.
Lou Ness.
Here.
John Reinhardt.
Here.
Brian Sager.
Here.
Michael Shorten. Michael Scala.
Present.
Larry Smith. Gloria Van Hoff.
Present.
Tracy Von Bergen.
Here.
Kelly Wegner.
Here.
Chairman Bueller.
Here.
We have
Okay.
Ann Eltoff and Terry Greeno remote.
All right, having a quorum, I will entertain a motion to allow Ms. Greeno and Ms. Altoff to attend remotely. Ms. Campbell makes a motion. Mr. Scala seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I have a handful of items I'd like to share with you before we review the agenda for next Tuesday's voting meeting. It's my sad duty to start today's Committee of the Whole with news of a county employee gone too soon. On September 20th, Jeff Lovato, a field supervisor with the Department of Health, passed away unexpectedly. He was only 49 years old and he left behind two sons. He worked for the health department for more than 25 years and he was a dedicated public health official who touched a lot of lives, and he's going to be missed dearly. I ask the county board and everyone here this morning to join me in a moment of silence to honor his memory. Thank you. Earlier this morning, right outside in the parking lot, we had the honor of joining the Department of Health in cutting the ribbon on its new mobile clinic. The clinic will significantly help our health officials improve access to healthcare services for rural and underserved areas, providing services such as immunizations, preventative care, WIC assistance, and more. The county board approved the purchase back in February, once again wisely leveraging our ARPA funds through our Advanced McHenry County Grant Program. The clinic is going to be a tremendous asset to our disadvantaged residents, and the health department's breaking it in as we speak, offering our county employees the flu vaccine if they choose to receive it. If you haven't had the opportunity, I encourage you all to check out the health department's new Health Atlas, a dynamic online tool to provide the public with comprehensive insights into the health and well-being of McHenry County residents. This morning, after members' comments and public comment, County Epidemiologist Ryan Sachs will be giving us a presentation on the Atlas and the information it contains. October is Manufacturing Month in Illinois, and on our agenda for next Tuesday is a proclamation designating October as Manufacturing Month here in McHenry County as well. Manufacturing is, of course, a vital component of McHenry County's economy, and thanks in part to the Advanced McHenry County program I mentioned earlier, we've helped make some great strides to help it grow, such as helping fund the new Foglia Center at MCC and a metalworking lab at Woodstock North High School, creating the summer rotational manufacturing internship program, and much, much more. As I reported to the county board earlier this month, county administration has partnered with the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation to create a series of videos called Rise and Thrive, which showcases McHenry County as a great place to start or expand a business. The series of videos has been posted to our YouTube page and it continues to grow. Besides a video that features how MCC and our workforce network make sure McHenry County leads the way when it comes to workforce training, a future video will feature a local manufacturer to discuss why McHenry County is a great place for manufacturing and industry. Stay tuned. Finally, on next Tuesday's agenda, we're also including a proclamation observing Operation Greenlight for veterans. It's my privilege to announce that McHenry County will again join governments nationwide by installing green lights at the county administration building and other facilities to let veterans know about the benefits they earned, and that our Veterans Assistance Commission is standing by to help them apply. This concludes my remarks. Do any members have comments today? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. Okay, just a quick note before we get started with public comment. This is your opportunity to address the county board. You'll have 3 minutes in which to do so. If you have not concluded your remarks within a 3-minute period, I would ask you to summarize your comments so that we can move on to the next speaker. We've got quite a few today, so it would be great to proceed efficiently. First one up will be Lou Leone.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm actually here as one of the instructors for LGMC Government Day for the class of 2025. I'm also a city administrator for the city of Harvard. My address is 201 West Diggins, Harvard. I am taking this opportunity, and thank you for indulging me this, to explain to our class members that people know that you have one, or every person has a vote. But very few people understand that at these meetings, they have a moment to actually speak about what their concerns are. And that's the whole basis of public comment. It's the agendas are produced 24 to 48 hours in advance. It gives every citizen an opportunity to review what the commissioners will be looking at. The public comment section is there to discuss items that are not normally on the agenda. And it's an opportunity to come up, meet, discuss, and I also wanted to point out to classmates that you all are people. You're some retired, some working full-time. When you approach, you need to be respectful of the fact that just like you're taking time out of your day to voice or to vote for things to improve the county. Each of you are here. You volunteered to do this, to run for office. And again, my classmates here, who will eventually be alumni of LGMC and hopefully carry on that our discussion today is shared vision. You have a shared vision for each of your districts of what would improve their lives and the overall theme of the county. And I apologize for kind of rambling on a little bit there, but again, the whole idea is to demonstrate that everybody does have a moment to speak and share their vision with the commissioners, and then hopefully that leads to further discussions. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, in order to move along efficiently here, I'll call the next speaker, and then the second speaker can line up behind and proceed. First will be Kirk Donald, followed by Tim Beck.
Hello, my name is Kirk Donald, and I'm from Johnsburg. I attended the recent Finance Committee meeting where it was said that McHenry County is losing employees to other counties and municipalities because we don't offer them enough. Let me point out one of our county's best success stories of a person who came to this county for work 20 years ago, eventually became undersheriff, and is our present sheriff, Rob Tatelman. And there are other examples. Also at that meeting, it was brought up that the county needs to hire 3 additional police officers. We're not just hiring officers, we're paying their pensions and more than likely buying additional squad cars. The overtone of the meeting was that if you didn't support a 9% property tax levy, you were denying county residents police protection. My questions are, why can't we delegate funds from the revenue of the up to $8 million generated from our jail agreement with Lake County? Why can't we use revenue from the $2 million plus generated from county investments? Have we looked at other departments to make common sense cuts? Do we still have COVID nurses on staff? We, as a governing body, are sending the wrong message to residents after working so hard to pass the sales tax referendum and telling them that their property tax bill will go down. But no, ta-da, here's a levy after all. It seems that a wolf can lose its fur, but can't change its coat. McHenry County residents don't need a tax increase, they need tax relief. Consider the recent ComEd rate increase, state and local gasoline tax increases, auto and homeowners insurance premium hikes. Mine went up over $1,000 a year. And finally, the recent property assessments on our homes. Mine went up over 11%, which will compound the 9% tax levy. Thank you.
I'd like to make a point of clarification that there is no option in front of the county board for a 9% increase to the property tax levy. So I just want to make that very clear. Mr. Beck, followed by Janess Abraham.
Hi, my name's Tim Beck, and I also attended the Finance Committee meeting last week. And I listened to the discussions about inflation, fiscal responsibility, the financial challenges that our taxpayers are already facing, the demand for services, and the other issues that need to be considered by the board in making those decisions about the budget for next year. I learned the committee has been considering 5 different scenarios, and I left the meeting thinking that I could probably support the middle ground, the third option, which is basically no increase in the levy except for inflation. But I now support option 2. So let me start with the issue of inflation, which is to a large degree simply a function of supply and demand. And I realize our county board has no control over what the politicians in Washington, D.C. have done to cause inflation. But our country cannot continue to supply money, printing more of it, and then foisting an ever-increasing amount of debt onto our children and grandchildren. So contrary to what the media is telling us, inflation is not going down. The higher prices that we are seeing here right now are here to stay. And this includes the increases in the cost of housing. It is true that the rate of inflation is coming down, but it's still above the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. And if you hear what the Democrats are proposing, it's a continuation of more taxes, more spending, and more debt. McHenry County has no debt, and it needs to stay that way. And it will if this board continues to be fiscally responsible. I acknowledge there's an increase in demand for services, and I fully support the additional deputies because they are needed to help protect us from the effects of the Safety Act and no cash bail. So I recently learned that the equalization factors that affect the assessed value of our homes range from 1.08 to 1.3, or 1.13 for the various townships. The increase for McHenry Township is 11.6%. Because of this increase in the equalization factor and what that means to us when we pay our property taxes next summer is that we're going to pay for that increase in the equalization factor. So I can no longer support option 3, and I urge the board to approve option 2.
Just quickly, I will entertain a motion to allow Mr. Shorten to attend remotely. Ms. Meshes, seconded by Mr. Hendricks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Ms. Abraham, followed by Tara Nielsen.
Hi, my name is Janess Abraham. I'll keep this short. I was born and raised in Crystal Lake. I'm a widow, senior citizen on a fixed income. And all I want to do is to stay in my house. I live in the home that my parents lived in. My kids live nearby, and that's all I want. I can't afford any more taxes. So that's it.
Tara Nielsen, followed by Tina Paskey.
Good morning. Thank you all. I know how much fun it is to listen to us come up here, and I see the talking and the boredom, but I appreciate you guys very, very much. All of your hard work for preparing for the upcoming budget meeting. I also spent many hours watching the meetings and doing research on computer and praying to make sure that I was prepared to come here and speak to you guys as well. I admire how you all have jobs and can still go to all the meetings. I don't know how you do it, but I thank you. I have some questions regarding the budget. One great question was actually asked at the finance meeting. Where would you cut the budget? Well, my husband and I were discussing our budget, and that question always comes up. At first, the economy really didn't affect us, but over the past few years, it has started to impact our family as well. Seeing my friends struggle to pay their rent or mortgage, having to go to food pantries and losing their jobs, things are starting to affect it within our home. It's not a good feeling. That's why I wanted to thank you guys for being servants of the taxpayers who voted you in. I see in many of your hearts how much you love your constituents, especially through the phone calls made to you. And for those who don't return the phone calls, well, we know who you are as well. You have 5 budget choices ahead of you, not just the one recommended by the county administrator or the finance committee. I recommend any that do not increase the CPI for the budget year 2025. Now, where would you cut the budget? Well, my husband and I came up with some great ideas that you can write down and look into later. Have you done, or would you be willing to do a study for a 5% budget cut across the board for each department? Have the department heads devise ways to reduce their budget just to see what it would look like? Can you budget to increase the sheriff's department while decreasing elsewhere? Many of you really seem to care a lot about that, so I knew that that was an important thing for you. Another idea is to reassess, this is gonna win me some good brownie points, is to reassess our overpaid county administrator. Sorry, Mr. Austin. I realize you have become dependent on your over $250,000 salary. However, upon researching other counties in our area, I have found that if we paid our county administrator what other counties pay theirs, our budget, we would have saved within our county in the last 10 years, $1 million. This decision that is coming up for you guys is gonna be hard for you, and not everyone will be happy. I'll wrap it up. We can't pull from unending sources of money. It's finite. There's an old saying, death by 1,000 cuts. Well, that isn't a good illustration for the tax burden for us in the county and in the state. Thank you.
Tina Paskey, followed by Carol Koskowski. Okay,
Hi, good
followed
morning.
by Bruce Johnson.
Good morning. First, I want to start with thanking each and every one of you for supporting us in our county. As Tara greatly said, you take time out of your day and represent your constituents. I come here with a simple request, as this tax levy would drastically impact my family and friends. As our taxes have already gone up severely in last year's tax increase, I'm watching my friends, as Tara said as well, having to go to pantries, barely being able to feed their families. I'm watching them choose between what supplies they need for their home and being able to stay in their home. I simply ask that we do not approve this tax levy increase at this time. Everyone is struggling and cutting their budgets and trying to make ends meet just to feed their families. I ask that this board consider not passing this tax levy just to help our constituents. And thank you.
Bruce Johnson, followed by Judy Zablinski.
Good morning, Board. Good morning, Chairman. When I spoke earlier last week at the County Finance Committee, I may not have had all the facts correct there, but I do apologize if there's any misrepresentation. But I'm a longtime taxpayer here in McHenry County. I live in Trout Valley. I'm the chairman of the Algonquin Township Republican Party and also a founding member of We the People. So I'm here today to address the proposed annual budget for fiscal year 2025 that was on your agenda today. When I spoke last Thursday at the Finance Committee, I hadn't received my property tax assessment notice for the pending year. Didn't realize that we're going to see more than a double-digit increase in our property valuations. So my question to the board and to the administration is that were they considering this increase in property valuation when they considered the new budget? I'm looking at 11.81% increase in my property value, and I'm just asking that question. I don't know if that was considered or not, but looking at the proposed increase in the budget for the county portion of our tax bill, I would seriously ask that you consider that. So, we continue to see out of control government local spending on local, state, and federal levels. As a historically conservative county, we have to stop the madness and set the precedent for others to follow. Should the proposed increase be allowed to further trigger our other taxing bodies in our county to do the same? So if you put forward the increase, I'm sure the other taxing bodies are going to say, yeah, we can have free reign on that too. So based on our increased property valuations alone, you, the county, will get more than enough money to meet your budgets, and you must say no to any increase. So thank you.
Judy Zablinski, followed by Lisa Harfel.
Good morning, board members. Good morning, fellow citizens. Thank you for hearing me today and listening to my comments. Please indulge me in a very short story about a young, single Puerto Rican mom that I know from the Humboldt Park area in Chicago. I know that there were times that she asked for her neighbors for milk for her baby, telling them that the baby was asleep and she couldn't go buy milk for before the baby woke up. Her shame of having to ask for help prevented her telling the truth. You may ask, why does this matter? I'm hoping to give voice to the single moms that I don't think are here because they're busy trying to survive, and even during good times. It's even harder during hard times. And so this young woman struggled silently, not wanting to share her need or her shame. Shame of having to go and apply for public aid. Shame of having to use food stamps. Sorry, I may get a little emotional here. So I'm speaking on behalf of them because I don't see them represented here. And that young, single Puerto Rican woman that was a single mom was me 50 years ago. And I wouldn't have been in a meeting like this because I didn't know any better and because I was struggling to survive. I feel now that as an old woman, my job is to speak on their behalf. And so even in the best of times, when you're a single mom, it's very hard to make it. So I ask on their behalf and my former younger self that you please not increase our taxes. I thank you for listening to me and for your consideration.
Okay, Lisa Hartel.
Hello, good morning. I want to thank each and every one of you for your time and your dedication and your service. I just want to verbally express my husband and I our serious respect for each and every one of you. We love McHenry County. We've lived here over 20 years. We're tax-paying citizens. And I just have a little personal story, if you wouldn't mind obliging me. I grew up with a single mom. She worked a full-time job at night, third shift. We lived on food stamps, and by whatever means we could to get by, didn't have a car, just lived off of charity a lot because times were just really hard. And over the years, God has truly blessed us, helped us work hard. Mom said, if you work hard, you can reach your dreams, Lisa. You can do whatever you put your mind to, and I believed her. So I can honestly say in the last 20 years we've lived here in McHenry County, we're from the south side of Chicago, Cook County. We have never been so happy in a community. We absolutely love the people here. We feel at home here. And we just found our place here. And when we were looking at homes in the area, our realtor and our attorney looked over our figures and everything and said, okay, you guys can do it, but why are you picking this area? Do you realize they have some of the highest taxes anywhere in Illinois? Why are you doing this? And we're like, because we feel we're supposed to live here and we're going to trust God to help us pay our bills. And we've never felt sorry we made that decision. However, we've watched our taxes consistently every year go up, up, up. We know times are hard here in America. We know inflation is just off the charts. We're all feeling it. We all pay our taxes. And this thought keeps coming to my mind the last couple of months. It goes back to my mom, who was a single mom, raised 6 kids all by herself. She worked really hard and had a little nest egg, finally got herself a condo and landed it in Crestwood, Illinois. This was like 35 years ago. And at that time, it was really hard to move into Crestwood, and I'll tell you why. Because they were the only place in Illinois that we knew of that was giving tax rebates. And if you lived in Crestwood, you got a tax rebate every year. So that made the area, like, there was a waiting list to get into Crestwood. So as a family, we had to pray, God, please help Mom get in here because, you know, she needs her dollars. And she got in there. And I was in my 20s at the time. And I will never forget, as a young mom starting out in our family, what an impact that made on me. I'm like, what kind of leadership is in this place that...
Summarize your comments, please.
Okay. They give tax rebates. I just want to plant a seed. If that's our goal, tax rebate, I know you're doing the best you can, but what if we put our sights on that? Even if we don't reach the goal, we're going to be moving massively further in that direction. So thanks for listening to me today. That's my thought.
Okay, that concludes public comment. We'll move on to reports and presentations. Today we have McHenry County Health Atlas presented by Melissa Adamson, our health administrator, and Ryan Sachs, epidemiology program coordinator, and Chloe Kavita, health department epidemiologist.
Good morning. I am actually not doing the presentation.
Well, it says here you are. So
I know.
You're on
I was
the,
surprised when I saw that on the agenda. But I do have Ryan Sachs here and Chloe Kavita. Ryan is the program coordinator for our epidemiology program, and Chloe is one of our epidemiologists, and they have worked extremely hard to get this data dashboard up for you. It was presented to the Board of Health. It's very exciting. I hope everybody in the county takes a look at it. It's a rich amount of data available with visuals, and it's pretty cool. So they are going to walk you through and show you some of the information. It's already up on the website, so I encourage everybody to go check it out. Thank you. Thanks, Chloe.
I'm good. Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the McHenry County Health Atlas. And as Melissa said, my name is Chloe Kavita. I am one of the epidemiologists at the health department. So I'll be going over the Health Atlas with you all today. And as she mentioned, it's a really great online resource that we've developed in partnership with Metopio to make data easily accessible for our communities. So if you've never accessed the Health Atlas before, the way you would do that is by going to healthymchenrycounty.org, or you could go to the health department website, and there's a couple different ways for you to access the dashboard. So also, if today's demonstration, if you still have some more questions, there is a how-to video that I recorded that is available on the dashboard. So if you expand the menu onto the side, there is a how-to use button here. And then under video tutorial, there is going to be the video, like I mentioned, that I will be walking through a little bit more in depth about how to use the dashboard. It's pretty quick, it's about 6 or 7 minutes long. So a little bit of background as far as why we created this dashboard or why we felt there was a need to have it. I think if anything, we've learned a lot from the COVID-19 pandemic that there was this need for the public and our communities to want access to data. I think if you recall back to COVID, there was that kind of need for the need for a dashboard that displayed COVID numbers in real time, as well as showing the data quickly and making it really accessible. So we took a lot of the success that we had from there to kind of bridge that data gap that we felt was needed to be bridged between the data that we had access to, as well as what the community was wanting to see. So what we did is we compiled data that we had access to either from publicly available sources, data that we curate and collect ourselves, so like some of our stuff from our opioid surveillance, as well as our communicable disease data. A lot of that data we already had in static reports on our website, but this makes it a really nice and interactive way to be able to see that kind of data. And then we also have data from our community health assessment, where we had previously had all the data in about roughly a 200-page document. And so what we did was that we took that data that would have been static within there, and we have put it onto our website. So we're trying to get the data to be as easily accessible as possible and to be as up-to-date as we can get it to be, so that people have the data at their fingertips. So to kind of navigate you through the website, so again, it's healthymchenrycounty.org. Over here you see we have our health priorities, and you can see that there are 4 categories there. So in 2022, we were working alongside of our community partners, and we identified 4 key areas that they wanted to focus on for this cycle of our assessment. So we have data available for those. We also have, if you scroll to the bottom, there are various health topics that you can learn more about, and they're broken down into larger categories. And then if you hit the Learn More button, you can learn more about some of the other topics that are within it. And I'll go through a specific example so you can see it. But each of the data topics has a description underneath it. And then for this demonstration, we'll just go into demographic characteristics, where you can learn more about the makeup of McHenry County. So if you click on Learn More, it brings you to this page where it says Demographic Characteristics, explains to you what exactly demographics are. And then if you scroll down, it will show you the data that we have available for demographics. So if I click on demographics here, you'll get the data that you're looking at, which is demographics, the unit of measure, which in this case is going to be % of residents, and I apologize if it's kind of hard to see if it's a little small. And then a description below it to describe to you what exactly you're looking at. All of the metrics will kind of have a very similar format, where it will be broken down into comparisons and trends, map, rank, and sources. So I'll be just pointing out a couple of those highlights for you. But again, if you have any more questions on it, or you want to learn a little bit more in depth, you can watch that how-to video as well. So in all of the indicators, you'll see some sort of chart. So in this case, you'll see a bar chart where you can see the comparisons and trends of the sex of the residents compared to McHenry, Illinois, in the United States. And you can see that this is for the year of 2018 to 2022. And now if you wanted to change how you view the data, you can go to Chart View. And instead, you can just view McHenry County by clicking just this place. You can also see data as a line chart. So if you wanted to see the data over time, you could see that as well. Let me move this so we can see it clear. And what you can also do is that you can change the stratification or the time period. So a stratification is going to be if you wanted to see the data broken down into something smaller or by a different group. So in this case, you can see the demographics of McHenry County by race and ethnicity. You can see it specifically by a certain race ethnicity group below, which is going to be these like subheadings here. You can see the demographics by age, race, ethnicity, and sex, and so on and so forth. You can also change the time period as well. So these ones are showing 5 years of data, and you can also see it 1 year at a time. There are margins of error on most of the data that we have available. So we just say to keep in mind when you're using comparisons to see if there's a true difference by looking at margins of error. And then I will show you where we have notes about that as well, if you need any clarification about what those are. A lot of our data will also have things available in a map view. So in here, you can see demographics in a map, and if you hover over it, some of them might have census tract data, some of it might have zip code data. And if you hover over, you can see the various stratifications. So for this example, you can see if you hover over in this area, what the demographics for non-Hispanic white individuals in that 5-year period is for this specific census tract. There's also a rank functionality. But also very importantly on this page, there's also a sources tab where we do encourage everybody to please look at when you are looking at the data on this site, is that this is where our technical notes for the indicators are going to be. So the technical notes are going to be any kind of nuances with the data that you might need to keep in mind, anything that we identify that you might want to know before using the data. And then as well, it lists the sources that we have for the county data and for all of the data available on here. And there's a couple ways to search for various topics. So if you don't want to flip through the Learn More buttons to try to find a topic that you're looking for, there is a pretty interactive search bar on each page. So if you want to look up like median age, like you can type the word median, and then it starts pulling up anything that has the word median in it, and you can click on it that way. And there is a beta version of an AI tool that is still in the works. It's not 100% perfect yet, but what it is this little button right here. If you click on this, you can type in a question here. So if you wanted to know what is the population of McHenry County in 2022, it theoretically will spit out the population for you for that specific year. And then finally, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the dashboard, there are a couple places to fill a form out that will get sent over to the epidemiology team. So you scroll to the very bottom, there's a button here that says Contact Us. And then also on the menu on the left-hand side, if you click on Help and Tools, and you scroll down some more, there's that Contact Us form here, and you can select what it is that you would like to notify us of, and then you just fill out the form, and then that will get sent over to us, and then someone will hopefully get back to you as soon as possible to answer any questions you might have. So that concludes my part of the presentation of the Health Atlas. We're very excited for you all to hopefully take a look at it, and yeah, I will turn it over to Ryan or to anybody if we have any questions.
Thanks, Chloe. We currently have 301 indicators on the Atlas. They are a range of public health topics. Yeah.
Excuse me, I just have one question. You showed 5 years of data. Does it go back any further than that, or is that all you have loaded?
Yeah, so that is actually a 5-year estimate. So there are certain estimates on the dashboard, most of them from the American Community Survey, that will be a collection of 5-year estimates. The American Community Survey offers 1-year estimates and 5-year estimates. Those 5-year estimates have less margin of error on them, meaning they're more accurate, more reliable. And so you actually can go back data with those 5-year estimates back sometimes even 2 decades, 3 decades or more. It will depend on the indicator. Certain of the data is actually collated for us by Metopio, the platform who is hosting for us. And some of their data can go back, 20, 30 years. Most of our public health data that we get ourselves goes back about 10 years, sometimes about 5 years. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you. That was abrupt. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Do any members have items they'd like to remove for discussion from next Tuesday's agenda? Going once? Going twice?
Wait, aren't we going, can you hear me? Aren't we going to discuss the budget?
If you would like to remove it for discussion, yes.
Okay, I request to remove it for discussion.
(17A1) and 17A2. Dr. Sager.
Yes, I do want to just express my sincere gratitude to those members who addressed the county board this morning under public comment. I think that you did so in a very positive, articulate, and considerate approach, and so I am very, very grateful. Budget is an incredibly difficult thing for any unit of government because we understand that there are incredible challenges for many individuals, families, and businesses, and we struggle with the need to try to find that sweet spot, if you will, where the balanced approach is going to continue to meet the demands and the needs of the residents that we serve, and at the same time, not put an undue burden upon them in terms of taxation. And so I do want to just say again, I thank you very much for your most appropriate approach this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Greeno, 17A1 and 2, I think we'll just take them both together.
Okay, I would like to state that last year I put a lot of work and effort into presenting to the board that we are, I'm addressing the county board first. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, guys. But I spent a lot of time and effort putting together evidence that we had plenty of revenue to cover the budget without increasing the levy or taking the growth, and it turned out to be actually true. We're in the same situation this year. I will not be voting for any increase in levy or new growth, and there's lots of opportunity between now and Tuesday for each of you to talk to the different people in administration, and I would like to say that it is administration's job to do what I did last year, and it's their job to do it right now, to look at the different revenue sources that have been brought forth, and that using the sheriff's deputies as a pawn in this discussion is very inappropriate and unnecessary for our board, and it is undignified, and I really, I don't think that anybody appreciates that. We're not talking about addressing or detracting from our public safety in any situation here. And so I would encourage everyone to please look into this, make sure that you understand, and remember that if you really care for these taxpayers, if you really are representing them, they know what you're doing by your vote. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shorten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to echo my appreciation for the members of the public for coming out and expressing their point of view in a polite and dignified manner. I'm also grateful that technology has advanced to take into account people that have day jobs. And I'm sitting here in a McDonald's parking lot listening to all the comments. Just real quick, my statement on the budget and the levy is that, point of clarification, we're not voting on the budget on Tuesday. We're voting on just posting it for review. The actual vote on the budget and the opportunity for changes will take place next month. I'm going to use that intervening time to go through on a line item level and review the budget and make sure that I'm comfortable with the direction that I'm going to go. I've always said when I'm talking to constituents, I'm not a hard no tax increase, but I want to be very sure before we pass along any increase that it's warranted and that every rock has been squeezed of every drop of blood that we can find. So I look forward to spending the next month digging through spreadsheets, talking to staff about their needs and making sure that I can feel confident the middle of next month, my vote on the budget.
Thank you. Ms. Meshes?
Thank you. When people ask me what do we do on the county board, I often say that your county board member and me, even if I'm not your member, has a responsibility to respond to the people of the county, to explain our policies, to be a resource. And so I'm going to take this moment to clarify how assessments and levies work, because I'm assuming everybody in the county got an assessment bill the previous week, and that everybody's assessment has gone up. And indeed, mine also went up by 11%. But that doesn't mean that taxes are going up by 11% next year. So I know that the county board members know this, but I do think it's our role to explain that also to our constituents, right? I feel like the last 2 years, Alex Benitez, I was worried I was going to say his name wrong. He had a presentation for us, and I think it's probably findable on the county website. Is that true, Peter? Is it still okay? So that you can have a longer presentation, and the people in the who are listening to this meeting can go look that up. Maybe we can even make a good link for it so that people can get it real fast when they go on our website. But in short, just to say quickly, that when we have a levy of, we're gonna probably levy 65 million, I would think. That $65 million levy is going to be split equally among all of the members of our county based on the value of their properties. So when my property value goes up by 11%, and perhaps Lynn's goes up by 11%, if everybody's going up by 11%, your taxes aren't going up by 11%. They're going only up by the percentage that would be given to you. So if everyone's taxes go up by 11%, but we only increase by CPI, and you're only going to see the CPI increase. Oh, go ahead, Peter, you want to say? Go ahead. We are decreasing. Sorry, I should also say, Peter's going to, right.
In every scenario,
Yeah.
we are decreasing.
That's, I'm sorry, I should have said that too, yes. At one point I looked up for constituents what the percent is, and actually I was surprised to see that in 10 years, if we go to 65 million levy this year, that's a 19% decrease from 10 years ago. And the problem is we don't feel that, right? I can see people in the audience like, we don't feel that 19% decrease from a decade ago, and that's because the county board can only control our levy for the county board. We cannot control the levies for any of the other taxing districts. So my school district in Foxborough Grove, their levy is 48% of my tax bill. I, as a citizen, should go to my different levying bodies and give the same thoughts I give here at the board, which is only budget what you need and only take that amount of an increase. Right? There are many taxing bodies who take the full CPI because they believe if they don't take it, they lose it. Our board has not done that. I don't know for how, it hasn't done it. So we have a 19% decrease from 10 years ago. So it can be confusing, but I do suggest going and looking at the presentation that is in our assessments webpage. And as for our levy, I already have said, I said last week, and I said it 2 weeks ago, that I appreciate the work that's been put in by all the staff members in creating the budgets for the departments, and then the staff of our administration who have worked with the department heads. And we can't just say we're going to give the sheriff's department the resources they need, but take it from somebody else. If the board's gonna do that, we have to say exactly who we're gonna take it from, right? And so I'm supporting the necessary positions that we need to fund for next year. I'm supporting the necessary equipment we need to get for next year. And so I think that it's actually, I feel disingenuous to say that we're using the sheriff's department as like a ploy. We're not. we have budgeted. This is how we're going to give them their deputies. This is how we're going to give them their equipment. So, thank you.
Chairman, I want to just expand on that comment about the deputies and where they're placed in our budget discussion. You know, when Carrie and I came forward with the supplemental list, we kind of segregated them into two groups. One was supplementals that were one-time supplementals. And for that, we did use and lean on the Lake County money that we've been earning and the sheriff's been helping us earn. And then the second was supplementals that had kind of an ongoing cost, a forever cost. And in there, we had a smaller group of supplementals that we did put forward, like election judge pay, IT contracts, you know, things that were really just continuations of programs that we already had going. The second was the 3 deputies, an increase in your law enforcement group that hadn't been done since 2005. Carrie really felt that that was like something that we should ask you, is this a commitment to public safety that you want to make, or do we want to try and do something different? So, you know, to say that these deputies are a pawn, I take some offense to, but that's okay. Let's remember, in February of last year, the state's attorney came to you and said he had a need. That all the counties around us had increased their state's attorney salaries, and he was losing people. The board stepped up and he made a significant increase that really helped to the attorney wages. And then we had to do it in the public defender's office too. That was a $719,000 commitment that was made by this board to attorney wages, and it was necessary. But at the time, we said, what are we gonna do? So we'll have to deal with it in next year's budget. It's here. It got kind of baked into the cake. 9 months later, the sheriff similarly told you he's got a new need. But I felt like Carrie and I needed to ask you, is this something you want to do? And that's how it is. It's not a pawn. This is elected officials telling you what they need. So just wanted to get that out there, and I apologize. There were a couple other questions at Finance Committee that Rob could maybe address. And Mike, and you want to touch on that, or which questions they were?
He's on the queue. Mr. Reinert's next.
Okay.
Thank you. I just had a few questions. Carrie, thank you for being so open and with your information for all of us. I just wanted to be clear. I know that we're reducing our levy quite a bit, Pete, but I want to be sure, are we reducing it relative to what we shifted over to the fuel tax and the sales tax?
So this,
right, you see where I'm getting? Because it's kind of a two-point thing, Pete.
Yeah, the county option motor fuel tax went from what is it, 4.7 to 8.
Right.
And I think it went up to 8.3 in July. It's been a godsend for funding our transportation. We were always behind in our highway fund and desperately trying to catch up. To have the comparable strength in our highway fund now, we left the levy at $9 million for next year. That's what's proposed. That was what it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
To have a comparable strength, we would have had to take that levy to $11 million.
Right.
To buy all the equipment and stay up to date that we would. Additionally, and this is not, maybe it's my fault for not more broadly talking about this, we reduced the matching levy in highway, in the transportation.
By 500,
By 500,000.
Yep.
So that's a $2.5 million swing in property tax that is made possible because of that motor fuel tax. And we're still getting our hands around how we're funding transportation in the highway fund. There is a scenario where we can maybe reduce the levy in the highway fund next year and bring it down from somewhere under 9 million. We don't know yet. I want to prove it to ourselves before we make that commitment, but I think that's possible because that motor fuel tax is really helping out. Carrie, am I forgetting anything about that?
Just one thing to add to, kind of building on what you said about highway, kind of addressing the Lake County revenue money, which we're using to fund our one-time capital and one-time supplemental. But that also eventually, at some point, if we didn't have the Lake County money, would also come out of taxes, property tax, sales tax, to fund the capital or the one-time supplementals. So I think it's a combination of what's coming down from removing the mental health levy, but also what we don't have to levy for in addition because some of these other tools
We
that
aren't
have.
transferring money from our general fund into our capital fund.
Right.
Because we've got all this wonderful money from Lake County.
And I appreciate
Right,
that.
right.
And I think all of us do. But, so the 2 million that we didn't have to match or fund additionally because of the 3.6 increase plus the 10% or whatever it was, a 4%. That was almost a $4 million increase in revenue, and then we saved 2 million. Carrie, the question I'm having, and I know the answer because we spoke of it, but that puts the reserve fund for transportation up to 6 months.
It's projected to be there.
Which we've never had before, and I commend all of us for that.
I'm not sure that we've never had it. I think it's
Right.
important, especially as I know that Highway has their plan to use RTA and other things to fund things. So Highway was reliant on RTA when it had a negative fund reserve. So I think 6 months is probably a good target for them because that's the time they go without receiving a property tax distribution.
Right, right.
And, you know, then they're not constantly having this interfund loan.
Where we
throughout
have
the
to
year.
pull it out of another bucket to
Right.
fund them.
Scott can help paint the picture a little bit.
Thanks,
more.
Scott. I appreciate that, because there's just two other really quick points I have after this.
So sorry, I came in late. I was down at LGMC. I think I caught the question, but I'll go over it real quick. So the county option MFT increase, the 3.3 cents per gallon, is resulting in about $3 million per year coming to our county option MFT fund, more than what we got previously before that. So it's only $3 million, not $4 million. The capital equipment, the snow plows, trucks, things like that, we moved from the highway fund to our county option MFT fund. And so we're paying for that at a county option. So that this year in 2025 is projected to be $2.2 million in costs. So we're getting $3 million, we're paying the 2.2, and then I don't know if it was mentioned, but we actually cut our levy by $500,000 in 2025. So what's proposed is a $500,000 increase in the matching fund levy. So all told, you know, it's not like DOT is going to be getting additional money for projects or anything like that because of sort of the shell game we played.
Right, right. And I appreciate that we're reducing our levy by the amount that we are. I mean, promises made, promises kept. But still, I just wanted us to be aware that we are still increasing taxes a little bit here. Because although we shifted it to the sales tax and the motor fuel tax, it saved us so much from our levy that we could increase a little bit without even feeling the increase. And I just wanted to make sure that we're increasing it only what's necessary. I know that, well, I think that the sheriff's office is making plans to enter into a new contract with Kane County to reduce his. We're not even going to see his expenses because he's going to earn more than he's asking for. Am I right, Sheriff?
I gotcha.
Give a cop something to break it, I guarantee you. So as far as the Kane County, it's not a new contract. We actually had an intergovernmental agreement with Kane County for a while. To your point, yes, we have taken on some of their inmates to assist with them. I don't know the longevity of it. So this time last year, we were also talking about the Lake County contract that was going to be coming. But I also want to be clear that we weren't going to guarantee that money because I can't guarantee it. I don't know what that looks like. You're also correct. If that contract comes through for a full year, yeah, it'll be another great thing that the sheriff's office can bring back to the county board on trying to save for other things that are being spent. But I also don't want to use that and get ahead of ourselves and say, this is a guarantee, here's another $250,000, congratulations. I don't want to be, in that position where if, Kane County is able to get back to where they need to be so that their staff is in a safe spot, I don't want then to come back to the board and say, remember that money that I guaranteed you all, I can't fulfill that obligation. So again, I think, we got to be careful what we say about it. But yes, you are correct. We are exploring other options on how we can, do our diligence to offset the budget.
Bird in the hand versus bird in the bush.
Sure.
Pretty much. But I commend you for that. And I don't think that any of us members of this board would say no to your request for the 3 sheriffs or your increases. I personally, Rob, promises made, promises kept on your end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think that's about it. I just wanted to make sure, though, that we were funding, and I appreciate your concern on that. Let's get it up to snuff of what we always wanted, and then we can figure out what we're going to reduce it later. I just want to make sure that we are honestly keeping this at the same level that we had from last year with these cuts, because it's almost like, yeah, we're bringing it down the 8 million or so, but only because of what we cut off of we replaced those things with other taxes, right? So I just want to make sure that we're being honest.
So can I comment on that?
Please do.
So in all these scenarios and all of our discussion, in order to be as transparent as possible, in order to talk about where the budget's growing, where the levy is growing, we removed mental health from the prior year levy. So that way we can have discussions like this. But in reality, the mental health levy is in prior year and it's not going to be in this year. So under all the scenarios, there is going to be a reduction. Taxes will not be going up. So it's more talking about the difference. So we're removing 10.9 for mental health, but maybe through the discussion, funding the supplementals, planning for the future, that would only look like 8.9 million coming off. So I think we're really talking about like the $2 million difference of less of a reduction and not an increase.
Right.
Yeah, and Carrie and I were playing around a little bit with scenarios yesterday. We actually looked at her home.
Actually, I think it helps to put it in context. We're talking about
So let's remember, the county is about 7% of the tax bill.
Right, and looking at Carrie's home, that's a
and
beautiful
so
home, by the way.
Yeah, it's in
Carrie, that's one of the nicest homes I've ever seen.
It's Scottermore's neighborhood.
An assessed value around 91,000, 350,000. I like that sometimes better, like the sales price. It helps me with comparison, and also keeping in mind, this is just to kind of give you an idea. There's so many other factors. So it's within a municipality. So under scenario 1, the reduction would be $84 from the county's portion of the tax bill. Under scenario 4C.
A reduction from what we've taken from the taxpayer.
The county's portion would go down $84. Under scenario 4C, it would go down about 61. And so not to minimize the $23 difference, but I think $23, about to have fully funded capital, have public safety, where the sheriff is recommending, to have, we don't know what's going to happen in the future on a lot of things, but we do know for sure that ARPA will be leaving in 27. So having some tools to be able to react to things going forward, I don't think $23 is really not a huge amount.
And thank you very much. I more or less, I wanted to understand it just a little bit better, but I wanted everyone else to understand too, just what we are doing here. I mean, we are saving, promises made, promises kept. And these sales tax should go up to help us get better roads for the future.
Yes.
So, thank you, everyone.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yeah, we do come off a little tone deaf, though, when we use the word need. We have to define need. When we have people come to the podium and say they have friends and neighbors and families using other means to even feed themselves. So we have to be really careful about what we consider is a need. When I came on this board, I was told emphatically, and I voted for no increase last year, but I was told emphatically that we need it. Our people are not making enough money. The pandemic has hurt our employees. And we have tried to diligently across the board give those monies. Always happy to give money. Good people here, hardworking people here, they deserve the money. And more than that, they spend the money in our county. They pay their taxes also, most of them. Some of them have gone north. They use the money here. I don't see that as a problem at all. I think we must do like our taxpayers are doing right now, though. We must tighten our belt in this moment in time. We must tighten our belt and really look at what is a need for 2025. Not beyond, not backwards, not forwards. Because as you stated, the ARPA money is still here for 2 more years. That's a little thing. We have to remember that the pandemic hurt all of our citizens, almost all, hurt almost all of our citizens. And then we've come out to this huge inflation afterwards, after the pandemic. We've helped the county employees. We've done that. The only thing that didn't get hurt by the pandemic, in fact, it was a lottery win with some financial considerations, was the county. ARPA helped this county. The whole county, no doubt, helped the county. So at a time when we've had that little leg up, we've had that little help, can't we pass some of that help back down to constituents? We can't sit here and say the $11 million we took off mental health is out of their burden, because we stopped sticking our hand in their right pocket and stuck their hand in their left pocket, because it's on a sales tax. And most of our people, especially those who are most financially vulnerable, are buying right here in McHenry County. That means that they're paying that sales tax for mental health. So we pat ourselves on the back, but we have not done a heroic lift here. I liked someone brought up the fact about a 5%. I realize that's not possible. But I think we can go department by department, and we can look, is there a place to tighten a budget for a single year? If we could force this board to do the right thing and go 0-0 on this, would this county survive? Oh yeah, we're gonna survive. We've all got money. There's money in every department backed up. We'll survive. More than that, we've got good people here. Every time I've seen a hurdle on this board, good people, not us, we're good people, but not our decisions, not our planning, not our work. Good people in McHenry County, in this administration, fixed those problems, came to us with ways of resolving these problems, and then we, of course, vote them yay or nay. We have good people. We can tighten our belts and never miss a beat here. But certainly things that defining need, do we need a parking lot or do we need some patches and seal coat? I've talked to many, many constituents since all this went down. Bar none, they all told me they need driveways. They all told me they won't buy driveways now because asphalt's too high. Very disingenuous then of the county to be spending their money on expensive asphalt. I'm just using that as an example, not as a no. We need to know for 2025, this is truly a need that will send the $23. That doesn't seem like a amount, and we also seem a little disingenuous to say about $23. There are families that the extra $23 in the budget makes some sense to them. It also shows that we are working for the people, not working for the county, especially here on this board. Thank you.
Mr. Scala?
Yeah, there was some questions that were brought up at our budget workshop meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, and then in turn were brought up again at finance regarding the sheriff's department, and some questions about potentially new sources of revenue or how they would be treated. And I just wanted to give the sheriff an opportunity to reply to them. You know, he wasn't at the workshop meeting, and you know, didn't get an opportunity to kind of answer them at the finance meeting. So I just, if you want to, I'm giving you an opportunity to reply to those 3 items, and I see your light on, so I guess I think to yes.
So I know one of the items, and you'll have to remind me of the other 2, at least I believe one of the items was talking about sometimes when there is a smaller agency that we, if a call comes in for service, that we have to go and cover that agency, whether you know, they're on or not, or what we doing to offset calls for service for other agencies. And I know that number has increased. So everyone's been paying attention. They know that, you know, over the past 4 years, law enforcement's had a hard time in recruiting, and especially the smaller agencies. Sometimes we have full-time agencies that are, you know, having difficulty the part-time agencies are having severe issues on recruitment. So local municipalities pay their local law enforcement agency to provide a service for their constituents. When those agencies aren't on, the sheriff's office steps in, because we all took an oath that we would, the county, regardless if it's county jurisdiction or not, these people live in our county and we will serve them. Now, that all being said, if it is a crime that is not in progress and not emergency, we defer that back to the local law enforcement agency. Where we're talking about 911 calls where someone needs help and that agency isn't working, we provide that support to that jurisdiction. They do not get the same type of law enforcement presence as they would with their local law enforcement agency. We don't proactively patrol those jurisdictions because we have our own jurisdictions that we have to cover. But it is a burden to the sheriff's office to be able to handle those calls for service. And I guess burden is not the right word. It's an additional responsibility for us. So the question I believe that had come up is, why don't we charge those agencies for those calls for service? I guess, those are conversations that I think each of you have those agencies within your areas and responsibilities. And I think those are your conversations that you should be having with your chiefs and feel the effects of what's going on. And I don't mean to flick that back to you guys, but I uphold my oath. My responsibility is to keep the safety of the county. I'm not going to give up on that. So I think that's one of, but there is an additional responsibility for that. And that's just the issue that we see as society, kind of made a shift and changed perception of law enforcement. It made it difficult for law enforcement to fulfill their own obligations, whether it be financial or just, manpower. So that's one of them, I believe, right? Was that one of the
Yep,
three?
that was one.
Can
yes.
you throw me a line on the other two?
Sure. The other one was the new facility in Cary and charging other participants besides the member participants to use the facility.
So we do that. So when we rolled that out early, or actually about this time last year when we were coming close to opening that facility, there were 5 agencies the founding agencies that came together and really put their money together to pay for both facilities. We're talking about the Regional Training Center and the firearms facility. Between those 5 facilities on an officer basis, it was equally shared. So the 2 facilities and that operation was funded by the Sheriff's Office, Algonquin, Cary, Lake in the Hills, and McHenry. We gave an opportunity to all law enforcement agencies within the county to become members. At $400 an officer, they were going to offset the costs to the operations of that facility, or both of those facilities. On top of that, there are ways that we are charging individuals that aren't members on an a la carte type basis or a rental type basis, whether they need to use a classroom or the range or both.
I'm gonna, a little bit more there. And Carrie, you were gonna help me on this. When we set up the training center, we segregated it out as its own fund because we want it to be a self-sustaining operation, kind of like Valley High. It's set off to the side, and so if Rob and the other leaders running the facility are able to bring in more revenue, that's going to lower our cost to operate the center, but it's not going to be an answer to our general fund pressures.
Okay, and the last item, Matt brought it up, and it was something about servicing of
warrants.
Warrants, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And I don't really understand that one, but being a former police officer, Matt understood it, so I'm sure you probably understand it.
I do understand
Okay,
that. I've gone on many warrant attempts. So warrants, one of the things that we have seen through this no bail process is that individuals that aren't using money as an assurity has increased the amount of individuals that no longer want to show up for court, which has increased our warrant amount. The days of 2,500 warrants is no longer, and those are days with my staff. And let me be clear: warrants can be served by any police officer in the state of Illinois, not just specifically my agency. The sheriff's office is responsible for maintaining the warrants, entering the warrants into leads. Leads is the system that if someone is run by a law enforcement officer and they're found to be wanted, that police officer has the legal authority to arrest that individual and then bring him to the office. So I just want to kind of level set on that. However, law enforcement agencies are strapped as they are. We talk about tightening our belts, and Matt, I appreciate that, and I know that if you guys want to look at our budget history, we have continuously tightened our belt to the point where it's getting close to our neck. So, I mean, that's why we're asking for what we're asking for. But the reality is that, you know, we have done more with less for 20 years. And the increase in warrant services is a burden to our agency. We used to be part of the Marshals Task Force. We're no longer. So, you know, there was other resources that we could utilize, but that was a program, and we can talk about that behind closed doors on another date about what that all looked like for us. But we don't have enough to just keep up with the amount that's coming in, for simplest terms. I know that there was some comments about bringing on part-time police officers. I beat you to it. We have current collective bargaining agreements with Unit 1, which is our police officers, that says we cannot bring on other staff to offset what our staff currently does. So even if I were to bring on part-time police officers, I'm gonna be coming to you and asking for more money. So I think that, you know, I appreciate and we haven't not thought about that. We are trying to get creative on how we are working with our local law enforcement agencies. And I think that there's a lot of things that came from the Safety Act that kind of pushed us to this point. And I think Pete made the points, and I just want to echo it. My staff did a really, really good job in 2024. Actually, let me go back. In 2024's budget, in 2023, saying that we would take 2024, not ask for anything in that budget, and take an assessment on what this no cash bail really meant to us, what the Safety Act really meant to us. And we did. I held my end of the deal, and I didn't ask for a thing. When every other agency, and I'm not blaming them because that was needed, but I was willing to kind of suck it up and tell my troops to suck it up for a year. The reason why we're asking for these three is I don't want to turn into another county that we see where they're working backwards and then have to transport the individuals that are in my correctional facility or ask for other help from other law enforcement agencies. So I think, you know, hopefully that answers those questions about those 3 points. If there's more, I'm more than happy to talk about them.
No, I just wanted to take away on the very first one you talked about, just to be clear. So you would like us as a county board or as elected officials to go back to the municipalities and talk to those elected officials about potentially if we are looking for revenue from them for the coverage that you're providing.
And I don't think I'm asking for you to talk to them about revenue, but I think I'm asking you to talk to those leaders so they can explain more about what they've explained to me. Those individuals, they pay their local jurisdiction taxes, but they also pay county taxes. So sometimes from their point of view, they're gonna say, well, we do have a portion of our taxes that goes to the county, and when we're not working, that service, those taxes cover the service that is provided by me already. So I think those are the conversations that I think, you know, when we talk about getting creative, and I was reminded not really to get out of my lane when it talks about budget, because my reality is I'm here to present to you the needs of the office and what I can do on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to where we're getting finances and where we're getting money as it relates to calls for service, Lake County has contracts where they do things differently. But those are different types of communities. And I think those are the conversations that if we want to entertain that, and if the county board wants to start doing that, I think you guys can start conversations with the local leadership and talk to me and bring me into it. I would be more than happy to. I just don't think that I want to take on another responsibility and force local law enforcement to reduce their services because they have to answer to their constituents. And that's something where I think I'm overstepping my bounds at that point in time.
Well, and I think there's a differentiation between Lake County and municipalities literally paying the sheriff's office to have a sheriff's officer sitting in that municipality
100%.
and be, in essence, a full-time officer there versus what you're saying that we're doing, which is simply covering 911 calls that happen to come in from municipality when they don't have officers on duty at that point in time. Right?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. And that's not unlike any other county. But I'm just looking at if we're looking at different creative ways that you're trying to create revenues or offset costs, that is an option that, you know, that could be explored.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Wegner.
Thank you. It's been said many times that it is a big balance between serving the residents here in the county and keeping taxes affordable so we can live here. We are all tax-paying residents, and believe me, we all feel the impact of taxes on in our families, in our homes. And I do appreciate all the stories and the comments and the respect from the public comment. I do. It all means a lot to us that you can tell us your personal stories. One thing I do want to point out, though, I don't think it's appropriate that we talk about the wages of a staff member. We are elected. Go ahead and talk about us if you want to, but please don't talk about our staff. And so I also want to thank you, Sheriff Tatelman, for all your information. But there was some misinformation that kind of came out of the finance meeting. Are we incorporating all of the revenue streams in our current budget? Yes, okay, thank you. So we are incorporating all the revenue streams that are viable in the current budget for next year. Thank you. I want to repeat what Teresa said. We have cut our budget by 19% in the past 10 years. And a lot of that is the due diligence that our departments have done. And in 2016, started a Cut 10 campaign where our departments cut 10%. So across the board, our budgets were cut 10%, which is significant for the size of this county. And it caused a lot of damage to the departments. It caused wages were stagnated. We lost people. We were able to increase automation because of this, which is great. So we didn't have to increase the staff again. Now there are some departments that are increasing staff, and I understand those are needed. And I want to make sure too that we can pay our employees so they can live in our county. It's important that people are able to live and work here. And I know that's difficult. We know in the Workforce Housing Committee, they said that 2/3 of the working people in our county go out of our county to work. So we want to make sure that we provide good paying jobs for the people who work here, so they are happy and they stay here and they do a good job and they provide the services that we all need. And Member Sager mentioned in finance that we are a service organization. That's what the county does. And I think we do a great job of it. And nobody asks for services to be cut. We all want services to be increased. I would say all of us here want to have the 3 deputies added to the budget. It is a very difficult decision to figure out where we will cut if we're going to add 3 deputies. It is not something that we can just tell administration, we want this, so cut here. Because we need to figure out what specific things are we gonna cut. Are we gonna cut a snowplow? Are we gonna make the roads more dangerous when we drive? Are we going to cut staff, which means services are cut? So I appreciate everybody's concern and wanting the reduction of taxes. I would actually ask you to go to your school board meetings and talk there. The school board meetings, the school board, they are the majority of our property taxes. And they are the ones who usually take the full levy. As we're stated, we're about 9% of your property taxes. If you look at my bill between all of the elementary, the high school, and the college, that is 75% of my tax bill. So that is where the real cuts are going to happen. So I would ask that you guys talk in public comment at the school board meetings, because they need to understand too that and I know, they know we're all struggling. We want to pay our teachers. We have wonderful school systems, but it's difficult. So I appreciate everybody's comment. I just wanted to clarify that we are incorporating all revenue sources, and we will do our due diligence in the next month to figure out what we can do. Thank you.
Ms. Ness?
So since I was the one who talked about charging municipalities for our backup sheriff services, I just want to say a little bit about that comment. If this county board chooses not to give the sheriff's department the funding they need, and we still need the 3 sheriffs, then for me, it's about looking for revenue somewhere. And I'm well aware that if we go to our municipal partners and we tout our shared services agreements that we have with municipalities, which is unique to this county, that we're now putting that burden on municipalities. I get that. But the revenue comes from somewhere. And if we're not willing to provide that revenue, I want the sheriff's department to have 3 deputies. And I'm unwilling to ask the departments to further reduce their services to do that. So when I talk about charging municipalities, it's really about revenue for me, so that we can give you what you want if we're not willing to provide the funding so that you can do what you need to do for the sheriff's department. I don't want to charge a small municipality for public safety. And if that's really what we're going to do, if we're going to tighten our belt, then we're going to call on every municipality to do the same thing. But I think that's sort of contrary to our philosophy of shared services in this county, that we help each other out this way. That's what we do. So that was why I brought that up. It wasn't because I think we should run out and, do I want Mike Turner, yelling at me about now we're going to pay for backup? No. I want to give the sheriff what is required to assure public safety. And if I can't do it this way, then it has to be passed on somewhere else. So that was why I brought that up.
Dr. Sager?
Thank you, Chairman. 2 primary comments. I'll try to keep this succinct. But the first is that I do truly appreciate today's discussion. I truly appreciate the members of the public who've been here, the thoughtful commentary of my colleagues, and the knowledge of our staff. I think that this is a positive, robust conversation, and I'm very grateful for that. I think that we have to accept the fact as elected individuals and as staff members of our local units of government that government budgeting is an incredibly complex effort. We can talk about it in our own government-ese, if you will, because we hear these words all the time. We hear this approach all the time. We understand these phrases. But it's a difficult thing, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who have really studied this and are very knowledgeable, but it's a difficult thing sometimes to understand the totality of the budgeting process. And what makes it even more difficult is the fact that every type of unit of government has a different approach. County units are different than municipalities, are different than school districts, are different than community colleges. All of those have different requirements that are forced upon them, and have the challenge of trying to orchestrate their budget, which is going to meet their needs, but also is going to be one that is appropriately and well understood by the public to support. The thing that I would ask staff, if it's possible to do, because we've been talking about a reduction here, public talks about an increase here, because we're looking at an increase in CPI, I'd like to ask if it's possible to put a 1 or 2 page graphic together that just explains why this is different, why we are truly looking at a reduced overall condition or situation based on the historic nature when we still use increase in the CPI. That's a challenge sometimes for individuals to understand. So what is it that we can do to better help our constituents to understand? And I think that there are some ways that we could do that in a relatively straightforward manner. We talk about the fact that over the last 20 years, basically 19 years, that we've reduced our total levy. We talk about the levy. We talk about levies as if they're individual, and we're decreasing this levy, but we're increasing that levy. People don't always understand that the levy of taxation is an aggregate of multiple various levies that go together to make up that tax bill. I think we need to help individuals to understand those things. I also believe that it's important for us to be able to say that when we are looking at the totality of our budgets, that we've said it multiple times that the county is roughly 7% of the total tax bill. We say that, but I'm not so sure that on a relative basis, people grasp that. I'm very pleased with the Treasurer's Office and the communication that they put out most recently. It helps understand where it comes from, the pie, but we don't just say that in easily understood language to people. And I think we need to have that for a presentation to this body so that we can make it public and everybody knows that that's what we're talking about. So that's a request that I would make. The second thing that I want to indicate is that there are all kinds of outside impactors that we still have to live with. And the most recent change to the no cash bail and Safety Act, all of those are significant outside impactors over which we have absolutely no control. And yet we have to deal with them. And they are cost items. And that's only one example. I mean, it goes on and on and on about the things from the federal government or the state government that are forced upon us, and this body is responsible to deal with those on behalf of the residents at large. And so we just have to be cognizant of the fact that it is an incredibly challenging thing for us to totally deal with. I admire the staff. I admire their capacity to work with all of this and to put this out very forthrightly. And so I do appreciate the exceptional work that they've done. At the Finance Committee meeting, I did ask, because I will say publicly that I will not support a budget this year that does not provide for those 3 additional sheriff's officers. I won't vote for a budget that does not do that, because it's been since 2005, 20 years since they have had an increase in officers in this county. And we all know that the complexion of this community has changed dramatically in 20 years, and that there is a solid need for increased safety and protection. And that's the challenge of the Sheriff's Office. So I'm not going to vote to approve a budget that doesn't include those 3 additional officers. The other thing that I'm very committed to is fully funding our capital investments. We have to. We have derived a very solid reputation for being fiscally responsible, and that means that we can't allow ourselves to get behind. Because when you get behind, it costs more in the future. We have to acknowledge that. So I am not willing to look at budgets that don't keep us fully funded in capital and provides for those 3 additional officers. I had asked at the Finance Committee meeting that perhaps staff could go back and say, with regards to the police officers, in particular, with regards to police officers, what things could we cut that would equate to that cost? I would like to see that, a suggestion. That way this body can go forward and say, I see where you're getting this money. I understand that that can contribute to cover those police officers or those sheriff's officers, but no, we're not going to cut that server, so we're not going to cut that investment, period. But I think we should have some options to do that. So I would respectfully make that request of staff. Thank you.
Mr. Kearns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sager. You're always so eloquent, and I hate to follow you. But so I'm going to ask some questions actually to Carrie and to Pete and to some of the staff. But first, I do want to bring up the sheriff, Tatelman. You have done such a great job with your department. You've gone out and found the revenue when the state took our revenue away from us with the ICE contract and different things. And you reduced staff by attrition in your department. But you went out and you found the revenue, and the counties in other departments were using your revenue that you created for the county. We're using that. And I would be totally, I'm going to change my word to upset, with this board that this is even a subject, that it's been brought into this budget as a supplementary. I don't buy it that it's not been put there purposely to force this issue. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you again. I do support finding that money for you.
Are you suggesting that I would just
Pete, I'll leave you out of this, but I think this is wrong.
I'm not going to just put 3 deputies in your budget without asking you.
All right, and I understand that. I understand that, Pete, but I'm going to hit you with some questions here. And let's find the money, because that's what we have to do. We have folks in this audience, and I've been talking to a lot of residents. Top issue is, how do I stay in my home? The top issue here is, how do I stay in home? The second issue is safety, okay? So I understand both positions here. So Pete, if I offend you, I'm sorry. But somebody has to ask these hard questions, I believe, and someone has to do it. We're not sheep here to be led to the slaughter. We shouldn't do that. And the sheriff, it should not be put all on the sheriff here. And I agree. So go ahead. I'll continue here, okay? I'll continue with my line of questioning, and I want to make a statement. I actually pulled up the ballot question for the mental health department, or the mental health board, the 1/4%. And I want to read the last thing underneath the yes or no. This would mean that a consumer would pay an additional 25 cents in sales tax for every $100 tangible personal property bought at retail. This sales tax would take effect July 1st, 2024. This would remove the $10,975,000 from the property tax levy allocated for the mental health board effective November 30th, 2024. So that is correct. It did say reduce the levy for the mental health board. I think a big part of our residents thought that we would not pull out of out of one pocket the mental health board, which in the sales tax, they're going to get probably $2 to $3 million more than we funded them last year, possibly. And maybe they get less if things go south on them. But what I'm saying is the people were of the perception, when a lot of them, when they voted for this, that we weren't going to take it out of one pocket and then put it into another pocket by raising our levy, okay? And you can say it's a reduced levy, but on everything else, it is an increased levy overall, because we took the $10,975,000. So if we don't hold it at the $10,975,000, we've not done what basically this referendum, what people expected it to do. So with that being said, I'll go on to a couple of questions. And this is, let's turn over some rocks here. Mr. Kunkel, I appreciate it. You bringing that over to look. And we have always looked in the past years, since I've been on this board in 2016, we've always looked pretty hard. And I've said cuts had to be sustainable. And we're approaching it. Inflation, the unfunded mandates, and everything else.
Yes.
Pete, I agree
Yes.
with you 100%.
Yes.
That is possibly reaching past that point of unsustainable. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions, and we've always discussed this in the previous year's budgets, but no one has discussed it today. And so I'm going to just start asking the questions. We did ARPA hires since COVID. How many people were hired? And you don't know all that yet. And how many people were hired and by department were hired with COVID funds when COVID started? The health department, any department. How many people were hired? That's one question that before we vote next month, I believe needs to be answered. How many of those positions remain or are intended to remain when the ARPA funds are gone? That's question 2. Question 3. We've always looked at and built in our budget because we always had a lot of open positions in the county in our departments. And the county, Pete, staff, you've done a great job on that, but how many open positions do we currently have throughout the county that are basically still funded in our budget? Okay? And by department, what are those positions? The next question is, how many of those positions could we actually bring a resolution forward before the November meeting to eliminate 3 of those positions, or 4 or 5, whatever, to pay for the deputies that all of us want? Because we've always had positions open, and they've remained open for the entire budget year. They've remained open, but we have budgeted for those positions, and that's a lot what has carried us through sometimes, that we actually had that built into our budget. So that's a big rock to turn over, but there might be a few scraps in there enough. Am I right when I say that the additional funds for the sheriff's department is around 465,000? Is that number in my head right?
It's 400 something, yeah.
Okay, 400 something thousand. How can we find $465,000 in our staff that we have not hired, and some positions have been open for a long time? How can we put those positions on hold, a freeze for this year's budget or whatever, to cover those sheriff's employees? That, I think, is a possible easy exchange right there, without raising the tax levy.
Jimmy, we'll undertake that. It's a narrower slice of staff, because it's got to come from the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to come from the general fund. So it's a smaller pool of vacant positions, but I know that there's some vacancies out there.
Right, there's something else.
It's going to take more than 3 to get 3 deputies.
My main position is our ARPA hires, when that ARPA funds are gone.
Yeah, we had a slide on that in our presentation, and I think we can get that up pretty quick.
So first off, I agree with you that I think putting this, not tax increase, but this less of a reduction on the sheriff is unfair, because I believe it was you, Mr. Kunkel, in February when we talked about the state's attorney, you asked, why wasn't this brought up during the budget? Because these are the kinds of discussions when we're talking about these more expensive recurring personnel expenses have to be a part of the budget presentation. So, you know, and I think that's a little bit on me in the presentation we did a couple weeks ago. You know, once it's approved, we kind of put it in the budget and move forward. But I think, you know, it was probably, it probably should have been brought up as it's already approved, and now we have to talk about funding for it. And so really with the sheriff's positions, it's no different than any other recurring supplementals that we present to you every year. The sheriff brought a need, and if you guys feel that need is appropriate, then we talk about funding options.
Let's pause it. What if Rob waited? What if the sheriff came to you next February and said, I need 3 deputies? You say, yeah, we need 3 deputies.
That's not what I'm looking for.
We'll figure it out next year.
The sheriff,
we'll figure it out next year.
I'm not saying, look, figure it out next year.
I know, but that is a parallel with what the state's attorney did.
I appreciate what
you said. We'll figure it out next year.
I appreciate what you've done, and I'm saying let's figure it out right now by positions that we have not filled. Some of these positions have been open for years, and let's figure it out, and let's figure out any other way. Another question before I lose this question in my mind was, we passed the policies for 6-month reserves, correct? Or is it 5-month reserves?
It's 5 now.
Right, it's 5.
Carrie would prefer 6.
We've been talking about 6 months here today on some of our funds. Are they all 6-month or 5-month?
So we look every year when we sit down to talk about revenue, and we look at every levy and every fund balance. You can't look at every fund as equal, because some of them are more project funds. All of the special funds have restricted uses. So we can't say, well, this fund has 8 months, let's move it over to the general fund. Right. And you have to think too, some of these, that our project funds, they only have a single source of revenue. And so they may save up for a project for 3 years, so that fund balance grows, and then they do that project. The fund balance goes down. So in the budget policy, it's 5 months for the general fund.
For the general fund.
Yeah, which is really the majority of our conversation, because that gives you guys, it's the largest, it's the most decisions, it's the least restrictive use of revenue. So highway is similar to the general fund, except that they are much more reliant on property tax only, where general fund is about 40%. So I think 6 months for the highway makes sense, so they can pay their bills for 6 months.
So the 9 million will give us 6 months.
Correct.
This year.
Yes.
Okay, that
And I
was
think
my
it will-
question. I don't want to cut that.
And we were gonna watch that. Maybe next year we'll stay a
Yes.
little stronger fund
Like I
and
said,
we won't need 9 million.
Every levy and every fund balance we look at every year and bring you guys the options we think to keep the funds healthy, and keep the taxes as low as possible. To
And when-
address ARPA, I think, I know Carrie's listening, it's probably around 5. And so in the presentation I did a couple weeks ago, we did not include any of those expenses in what we think will roll off as a projection, because I think the positions are all up for discussion when it comes to starting the 27 budget. So those numbers for projection, we just did really things that are either contractual, essential for operations, and not that the positions aren't, but some of them are tied directly to the work they're doing with ARPA. So I think it's a relatively small, I think, 250,000 a year for those positions. But like I said, we didn't put those in any of our projections because it's going to be up for discussion. And then with regards to open positions, there's really 2 lists of open positions. So one is the open position list that HR is actively recruiting for. And then when I build the budget, we actually have software that is really helpful to make sure that we don't over budget for things like open positions. We actually, if it's been open for a long time, then I don't budget for it. And then we actually challenge the departments, why is this open for so long? Is it because you're waiting to implement a software, for whatever reason?
Waiting to finish a memory care unit.
Yes. So we really look at that. And then within the general fund, to kind of help keep the control of the open positions with the Finance and Audit Committee, in the non-departmental budget that we present by line item, there's 2 lines where we budget merit and an open position allowance. So we look at what's open, and then we take that and cut it in half, because I think you're right, but it's hard as we're coming out of COVID because we're filling more positions, So in COVID, I think we maybe over budget a little because we were having trouble filling positions, and we continued that. And then as we start to fill them, then we go over budget. But within the general fund, non-departmental, we have set aside a merit and open position allowance to keep the budget as low as possible within the departments, but then also be able to react and say, okay, well, you only have 5 people in your department. If one is open, then that's fine. But if we take it away from them and then it fills it, they're not large enough to cover that. So having some funds set aside that are controlled by finance and audit to say, we realize this is very fluid all the time, but also to not over budget. But the list you see from HR is not the list that we budget for. And I can get you how many we have budgeted.
I would like to see that comparison. Okay? And like I say, we have departments that are short-staffed. I know in transportation, we're short-staffed. But we have staff doing the job of 2 people. So I acknowledge that we do have. But we do, I want to see if we have anything out there that we could provide for those those 3 positions. I would like to see that. So I'll leave that because we have a month to think about that. To see if there's any rock, if we have to vote for an increase or not. And I will call it an increase, even though you all say it's a reduced. It's not a reduced. It is it is an increased CPI, taking the CPI for everything else. So the other thing in our question, I'd like the liability insurance that we're taking. Break that down for me. Is this anything to do, is it all, explain the liability
The
insurance.
levy for risk?
For risk. Scott, I think you're a big part of this.
You got a model for this.
We do have a model, and it's, the tax levy for risk was non-existent for a while because it had a fund balance that was able to sustain the needs. Now, under that comes our liability insurance, which last year was about $1.25 million, and we expect that to increase. We're roughly going to be about a 10% increase, but we're still waiting for those premium prices to come in. We're in a renewal period right now, so I don't know what that's going to be. In addition, we also budget for the losses, because that funds any settlement, any judgment, any property loss, any claims out of that. And we take we put in a loss fund reserve to provide some money based on a reasonable estimate of what we would anticipate, knowing that we don't know exactly what the year is going to unfold, but we've got a lot of trend data. We make I think we do a pretty good job on how we budget for that. And it's not a worst case scenario either, so it's not overly inflated. The model was put together to really answer one specific question, and that was to Carrie and to Pete and to the county board, how much do you need in the liability insurance fund in order to cover the losses, cover your insurance, cover your claims, and so you can be in salaries, which include not only risk management staff but also state's attorneys who do our legal defense. So we do a lot of it in-house.
We increase wages for state's attorney. It flows onto that tort fund.
Yeah, some of that increase, in fact, a lot of that increase impacted the tort fund. So that's not in the general fund. But anyway, the model was put together to really find out how much does the tort fund need in a property tax levy each year to sustain it based on the losses that we know today, what we can anticipate for the next several years, so you can be pretty strategic and surgical on that tax levy. I appreciate that Pete and Carrie and the county board has utilized that tool to help you make your decision. The reality is the county needs to buy insurance, the county needs to pay its settlements, its claims, and whether it comes out of the tort fund or another fund, it's not something that we can do. So this is, I'm going to say I would like more in there, and my model will show
that was my question. Is this fund whole?
This, with what is being proposed in this budget, yes. This is, we'll get through it by this year, and based on the model, we're satisfied with this for the upcoming year.
What have we done in the past if we were ever caught short on that? Where did the money come from? Have we been caught short?
The county actually was fortunate in the fact that previous practices built up that fund balance. So there have been times when that loss fund reserve, which is the main workhorse to cover all the costs, exceeded the budget. But fortunately, we had fund balance reserve to draw from and to cover those costs. So the money was always there in the fund, and we didn't have to tap into the general fund in my tenure, and I think in a pretty significant look back, the general fund did not have to supplement that. It was always in the tort fund.
And that's where it would come from.
And that's where it would come from.
It would come from general fund.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, I would say, but over several years of burning down that fund balance, now we're in a position where we need to supplement that with that property tax levy. And it is very limited in what you can use the tort fund for. The statute is very precise on what you can use it for and what you can't. So I want to be very clear, as Carrie had mentioned, when money goes into certain funds, it just can't be shifted to another fund. So that's why it's important that we keep that sufficient, but it's not overly funded at this point in time, I'll tell you, because it allows you to make some decisions with dollars or frees up those dollars for other purposes.
Okay, thank you. And maybe I misunderstood a comment made here a little while ago about the state's attorney's office. What does that have to do with our tort fund?
So
we
in
provide funding for them?
No, in the tort fund, there's several state's attorney positions, whether partially, in some cases fully, that are funded through the tort fund. because they do our legal defense, and this is on the civil side. Because they do our legal defense, the tort fund covers those costs. The other model that was used in previous state's attorney administrations was to outsource all the legal defense, which, as you know, attorney fees can really go up, and that was covered out of the tort fund. But by bringing that defense in-house, there's an allocation of the tort fund to those salaries because they, in essence, work for the tort fund. They defend your claims and your lawsuits. So therefore, that's allocated through here.
Okay, so this question's for Carrie. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, back to another statement. With the topic of which scenario this board would select, and I be honest with you, I don't have a clue which way it's gonna go here next month. I've been trying to figure that out, but I don't know where it's gonna go. But let's say we took a flat levy and the new growth, okay? Let's say we took that. In your opinion, where could we find any way possible to fund the sheriff's request? Where would that come from? In any thought?
The easy answer is you use
I'm asking Carrie to start. I'm gonna come to you.
So I think the easiest answer, but maybe not the easiest answer is, we have a strong fund balance, and right now we're relying on that strong fund balance to cover our capital projects. So the easiest answer that would definitely help us today, but I think long-term would have an increase in expense, is to find a couple capital projects that we can put off. But then really that's just kicking it down the road because we're still bringing on recurring expenses and saying we're gonna use a one-time revenue source to cover them.
Okay. All right, I've taken enough of everybody's time on this, so that did answer my question. I don't need anything from anybody else on that. But I thank you, the staff, and I'm sorry that I'm being a jerk about this, but I think people have to be a jerk a little bit sometimes about some of this stuff. And I hate to cut anything if we don't have to. We always like to provide services. We don't want things to deteriorate to a point, and I see a lot of lights have lit up here since I've been ranting here about things. So I'm gonna sign off on this, and the important thing to me is where we can find that revenue from for those positions for the sheriff's department. And the questions I asked, I believe somewhere under one of those rocks we can find that. So thank you.
Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, Member Wagner earlier mentioned that the budget was decreasing. I think she misspoke. The budget is going up 9.41% this year. Since fiscal year 21, it's gone up 62 million, which is about 30% increase. So I just wanted to be very clear, the budget is not decreasing. The budget is and tends to increase every single year.
The budget swings some with infrastructure projects, and
Of course.
You see it go up this year because of Randall Road, and you can.
But it is going up 9.41%.
Correct.
Right.
It's the levy, in the grant, yeah.
Second, because apparently everybody's talking about this, Sheriff Tatelman, I do support the 3 additional officers. If there's one thing you should take away from this meeting, it sounds like you're getting it. And then I'll keep it short and sweet. I support the 3% cut. I think it's disingenuous to say that, the property tax levy is going down. Meanwhile, last year we increased, by, percentage-wise, we increased it significantly. I think 3.5 million for the motor tax fund, or the fuel tax. The mental health board funding that we were supposed to be taking the 10.9 million with replacements, or by replacing it with the sales tax. you know, to say, oh, the property tax levy's down and then not mention all these other taxes that have increased. I do think it's disingenuous to say that, hey, we're reducing your property taxes when we're just making it up elsewhere. So I support the 3% cut. If that doesn't have the votes, I would support a flat, no increase. But where I stand now, I would like the 3% cut to be considered by the members. That's all I have.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here and telling us your stories. That really means so much to, I think, everyone on this board who really listens. If I get phone calls from anyone, I return them, whether you live in my district or not. So if you do have a question about anything, if I don't know the answer, I guarantee you I know someone who does. So please call me, tell me your stories. That was such an important part of this meeting. Also, our board members have just done an amazing job, as well as our administration. I've been on this board for 2 years, and I had no idea how efficient everything worked until I sat here. Now, I want to talk about the Sheriff's Department. I was on the Merit Commission for 21 years. I was the second longest standing member on the Merit Commission, and I had to leave the Merit Commission when I got elected to the board. I can tell you firsthand, I have nothing but love for the Sheriff's Department. They do an excellent job. And I appreciate the fact that they didn't ask for an increase until a year after they had observed what would be entailed with the Safety Act. And I just want, there are a few things that happened in the last 2 years. One of the things was mentioned here earlier. The state's attorneys got a raise because what was happening is that we were losing a lot of state's attorneys to other counties that were paying them more. So I was a little upset when this request came because it came outside of the budget period. I would have really have liked to have addressed that issue when we were looking at our budget. So this is what we have a chance to do now. We have a chance now to look at the need for the Sheriff's Department and include it in our budget so we don't get all upset later on when the sheriff comes to us because he can't run that department efficiently anymore. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the motor fuel tax. I was a little upset about that as well, because if we had made those incremental increases throughout the years, we wouldn't have had to take the full 8 cents. And if we had done 2%, 2%, 2%, whatever, it would have been less of a burden on the taxpayers. We could have accumulated more funds. So we waited until we couldn't wait anymore. I give the board credit for being responsible and not taking every increase that they could. But we got in a jam. We had to do it. And it was 8 cents. And it was a burden for the taxpayers. I voted against it. I knew it would pass, and I'm glad that it did, but I voted against it because we should have been taking those incremental increases in the preceding years so we wouldn't have to come back and hit taxpayers with the full 8 cents. So this is what we need to be thinking about. No one wants you to have to be making a decision with whether you're going to be able to buy groceries or pay your mortgage or your rent. We don't want that. And, you know, we had workforce housing group that was done by member Ness and member Altoff that is something that was unprecedented. No other counties has done what they did in producing this white paper. We want you to be able to live here and be able to enjoy it. McHenry County provides a lot of services, but they cost something. It's not free. It's not free. And one of the reasons that I'm still in McHenry County is because when I got married, I had 2 stepchildren, and we looked at what the school systems look like. We could have been in South Bend, but the schools were terrible there. So I know the school portion of that tax is a big part of your tax bill. I do think you should take a look at that and, encourage them to make better decisions. I have to say, I'm proud of every member on this board. They really are doing a good job of looking at how the money is spent. So, and again, thank you all for coming here and telling us your stories.
Mr. Kaminsky?
Keeping on the same theme as Mr. Kearns, we're going to be asked next week to vote on.
No, next month.
We're going to be asked next Tuesday to vote on abolishing the working cash accounts, which is just under $500,000. Where's that money going to go?
I apologize, yes.
That, shucks.
I can start, Carl. Your treasurer has done a good job of looking at some legacy funds, and the working cash fund, I think, truly fits that. It's a fund that I think Carrie and I and Donna all feel like it doesn't need to reside in the treasurer's office. You may recall in our presentation a couple of weeks ago, we had about a $4 million gap between what our expenditures and revenues, and that is a little over 900,000. So it's
just shy.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
going
mill.
to go into the general fund.
And that can't be used to help the sheriff out, or?
It is helping the sheriff out indirectly. It's all going in the same bucket.
Okay. That's it.
Mr. Gottemeiler?
Yes, one of the things that concerns me, and I do appreciate people coming here today, is that there's been some games played with some of these numbers. The actual part of the bill that hurts McHenry County over and over again, and what you hear most of our constituents talk about, is property taxes. However, confusing property taxes with the overall budget, and there is confusion there. I take umbrage with being called disingenuous when I look at the tax bill that we are charging people for their homes. We do not have a 9% increase in that bill. Now, if we're going to save, which we properly do, and we save for projects over years, it will show an increase in the budget. And so when we have something like Randall Road that's going to cost money, and we save for it for 3 or 4 years, it appears as if our budget's going up. It's going up because we have to allocate the money for the future when we're going to spend it, even though we already have it today. It's not an increase in taxes. It's spending the money that we've saved to fix a project or a structural project. The actual tax bill on your property tax bill for McHenry County under every single formula we're looking at will go down this year for that line. No matter which budget we approve, it's going down this year. It's not a 9% increase, it's going down. Does the overall budget have more money in it? Yeah, we've got ARPA funds, those have to be paid. If we don't put them in our budget, we can't use them. But that's not from property taxes. Your property tax bill portion of McHenry counties, no matter which one we vote on, is going down this year. And by the way, since I got on the board, it's gone down every single year for the last 12 years. And I'm sorry we're not getting credit for it. This board deserves that credit. It has gone down dramatically in the last 12 years compared to what the other line items on your property tax bill is concerned. I hope you go to those other taxing bodies and express the same concerns you have here, because that's the only place that can change it. Thank you.
Ms. Greeno.
Thank you. First of all, I do appreciate everyone, the constituents who have come today to speak, the hard work of the administration and the board members. With that being said, I just want to assure the people who have come to speak today and the taxpayers that we're representing that they do not ever deserve to be dressed down by a county board member. It is public information what administration makes, and when they feel that they are building a case as to how taxes are impacting them, and they pull that evidence and present it, that is their First Amendment right, and it is duly respected by this board, and we appreciate it. I want to remind everybody that this county participated in the COVID shutdown that basically stopped our economy. Coming out of that, we had a federal administration policy that threw us into the highest inflation that most of us have experienced in our lives. When the tax bills hit last spring, no one, not one person sitting here or in this county could say, wow, my taxes dropped. What a great job everybody's done. And I know that we are a small portion of that tax bill. However, we lead the way for other tax levy increases. Other organizations in this county watch us, and once they know that we're going, they follow. Except, of course, for the school boards, which are something in and of themselves. Still, it impacts everyone. So, to be fair, people are paying out of their pockets the motor fuel taxes and the sales taxes. So even if the levy has been offset by those taxes, they are facing overall higher taxes. Their taxes right now are higher than their mortgages. Many people have their mortgages paid off and they're on fixed incomes, and their property taxes is higher than they ever paid on a mortgage bill. Of all times, for such a time as this, we need to cut the levy this year. We need to be respectful of the taxpayers and what they're going through. We're talking about 1 year. We are very wealthy, we are very well funded, and we are no loss for revenue right now. Thank you.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes, just real quick. I was unable to find it. I was looking in the budget today. Are the supplemental requests in the budget?
Are you talking about what's out on the website?
So in our special meeting, there was supplemental requests for the workforce housing, $1 million, and a few other items.
So anything that's a rank 1 on the list, so I put the rank 2 things at the bottom. 2 is not included. Anything in 1 that's out on the, posted out on Open Book is included.
Okay.
So it matches what's on the ordinance. And just a quick comment on the rank 2, that doesn't mean it's a no. It's just right now it's a concept, it's a discussion. And so it may be something that you see in the year to consider, but it's definitely not a no. It's just not built into this budget.
Great, because I do have a barber too for some of those 2s. One other question, Carrie, and Rob, and Pete, and Mr. Christian. Aren't you glad we don't have hurricanes?
Yes.
I have a daughter in Florida, so I'm not making light of it. I understand.
Ms. Beshes?
Thank you. I wanted for the public to know, what I passed back to Board Member Kearns was the employee list. So 2 years ago, I was really pushing hard on let's not fund all these positions, and let's look at what the positions are. And I appreciate that, 1, I was educated that we don't fund all the positions, and 2, Human Resources gives the admin services a regular report on what the open positions are, how long they've been open for, and a discussion on that. So I've appreciated that staff has always been very responsive. When we ask for something, they immediately get it for us. They have ongoing reports that they've been giving us. It's hard for us. I certainly do not, am not able to listen to all the committee meetings that everyone goes to. So I think Jim did not have the list that I gave him, but that it was in the admin services meeting for a month ago, sometime, not this one, but the previous one. And the other thing I want to say is that, when we talk about, we've been asking where could we cut unnecessary funds, and the answer is, in the time that I'm on the board, it seems like the things we fund that we don't need to fund are when we're helping out the townships and municipalities who haven't budgeted for themselves to meet their own needs. So we could eat into our fund reserves, which I'm not going to approve. I wouldn't vote for it, but that is something as an option that the board could choose. And going forward, if we don't have the funds, we certainly aren't going to be helping out other parts of the county who are in some circumstances. So I'm not going to point out the different departments so that they can go be attacked, but I'm appreciative of the fact that the board takes the least amount of property taxes, but is able to then help out the parts of the county who aren't funding themselves in a way that can keep them sustainable. So I've approved supporting, helping out the parts of the county that need the help, and I will probably continue to do that, but that's what's gonna happen. If we're gonna eat into our fund reserves and we're going to try to fund positions that we don't have budgeted by not levying for them, then we're gonna eat fund reserves and not have the ability to help out where we're needed in the county. Thanks.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Scala makes the motion, Mr. Kaminsky seconds. All in favor say aye. Against, motion carries.
Before everybody goes, 1 second.
We're adjourned.
For the staff that is not gonna be here on Tuesday, if I can have a half a second of your time before you bolt out the door.
Okay.